Being a huge fan of Digimon and a gamer, I'm kinda obligated to play whatever game gets released in the franchise. Not that I wasn't excited for Digimon Survive to finally drop after over 4 years of waiting for it. I mean, the thought of a Digimon turn-based strategy RPG got me pretty hyped back in 2018, and even though, when I learned closer to its release that it was actually gonna be a visual novel with turn-based strategy combat sections, I was still planning on buying it day one. We're not exactly spoiled with Digimon games, so gotta support them no matter what. No disrespect to VNs, of course, I'm just not big into them. So I bought the game, played it, and had some thoughts. Here's a video. When it comes to visual novels, at least to my limited knowledge, Survive is pretty impressive. Sprites and the rest of the art look good. There's animations, effects, the camera moves around occasionally, the visual presentation is solid. Sound-wise, I don't have much to complain about. The music's good, you get sick of hearing like half of the songs, but that happens when you got a 30-hour VN with not that much money poured into it. Obviously the budget's low, but they did a great job of what they were working with. The art's especially impressive in combat. These Digimon look amazing in their little chibi forms on the battlefield. Sure, there's a few funny animations with some of them, like Wargreymon doing what I think is supposed to be a Naruto run, but overall the game looks great. There are some issues with the localization, like Digimon being referred to with the wrong pronouns at points, but nothing major. Being a VN, the gameplay is limited. There are dialogue options to break the text box reading action. There's 3 kinds. Ones that raise the stats of the main character, ones that raise the affinity of the other characters, and ones that most of the time do nothing but might affect the story in minor ways sometimes. A character's affinity determines the likelihood of their Digimon helping out during combat, unlocks evolutions when a certain amount is reached, as well as affects the story in a couple of cases. The main character's stats are Moral, Harmony, and Wrathful. These determine what Digimon your Agumon is going to evolve into, as well as what ending you'll get. On paper, the idea of your dialogue choices affecting not only your outcome of the story, but your Digimon's evolutions is pretty cool, but in execution it left me disappointed. See, the stat-raising dialogue choices are color-coded, and are always in the same positions. Sure, this helps when you want to go through the game multiple times and get all the endings, but I think making it clear to the player what path they're on, and even hinting what Digimon you can get by showing the silhouettes on the evolution screen spoils the fun of keeping this info a mystery, which would probably result in more players having different experiences by getting whatever ending was determined by their highest stat. On my first playthrough, picking dialogue choices just based on which ones I agreed with the most, I noticed that Agumon would evolve into a Digimon I didn't really like. I decided to only choose the red moral choices purely so Agumon would turn into a Digimon I like. Cool that I could choose to evolve into a design I enjoy better, but being surprised by the outcome of both the evolutions as well as the ending would be a lot more fun to me. I think keeping what choices raise which stat a mystery to the player on the first playthrough and then color coding them on subsequent playthroughs to help with getting the rest of the endings should have been the way to go here. And yes, the game wants you to replay it at least once, which is a tall ask for a visual novel. Despite the combat being simple turn-based strategy stuff, I found it to be quite fun. It can be a bit slow at times even after cranking the speed up to the max, especially when an enemy decides to run away and reaching it with your attacks takes a few turns. You got your rock, paper, scissors thing with vaccine data and virus type Digimon. You can equip your Digimon with items that boost stats, give additional moves, or passive abilities. Evolution is of course a thing. There's also a Shin Megami Tensei style negotiation mechanic to recruit Digimon to your party. Would be cool to see this in a proper RPG game. I've always thought SMT could be a perfect blueprint to a Digimon game. But yeah. Unfortunately, the game kinda discourages you from using recruited Digimon, because only the story relevant ones are able to buff and be buffed by using the talk function, which in the endgame is kind of a necessity. I honestly don't have much else to say about combat. It's not doing anything interesting, but it certainly isn't bad. What I do have a lot to say about though, is story. If you don't want to hear full spoilers, this is your last chance to bail out. Digimon Survive follows a group of kids who, after wandering to a local shrine during their summer camping trip, find themselves misplaced in a strange parallel world. There they meet and befriend mysterious creatures who claim they've been waiting for them for a very long time. The kids and creatures team up to survive the threats of this strange world and seek a way back home. If you're a fan, this premise is pretty familiar. The game has a few allusions to previous Digimon media, specifically the original adventure anime. These don't really serve a purpose beyond trying to get fans to point at the screen for recognizing them. The plot to Survive is quite simple, so the focus is more on the characters. But here's the thing. You'd think a visual novel with a character-focused story would take the time to explore these characters intimately. I mean, I played this game twice and it took me over 70 hours. These guys are just character archetypes to me, surface level, almost cookie cutter. Yeah, you get to know the issues that some of them are dealing with, but they're not properly explored. I'm not demanding this to be something like Persona, where you go through a dungeon dedicated to each main character and their issues, though honestly that would help. I'm just asking to get a little bit more from these guys. Behavioral quirks, speech patterns, their interests, something to flesh them out. Instead, the plot is much more interested in depicting tension, issues, and conflicts between these characters. And even that isn't handled well. It's all just a bunch of unimaginative melodrama. Takuma is your basic-ass main character boy. He's kind, he's brave, he's seen a million of these. His character's purpose is to be a surrogate for the player. His partner is Agumon. Aoi is a quiet girl who comes into her own and assumes a bit of a leadership role and takes care of the others. She's partnered with Labramon. Minoru is kind of a class clown type whose fears prevent him from being the hero he wants to be. Falcomon is his partner. Saki is a straightforward, seemingly popular girl who has a life-threatening disease and she's insecure about being weak. Her partner is Floramon. Quirky Mew is implied to have been assaulted, which has made her hothead brother Kaito overprotective of her, resulting in Mew running away a lot. They're partnered with Syakomon and Dracmon respectively. Ryo is cranky and cowardly, making him afraid of his partner Kunemon. He gets so afraid that in the first few chapters, he's pretty much experiencing a constant panic attack, which results in a complete mind break. His whining and screeching can get aggravating, but it's a clear sign of him not being okay mentally, something the other characters pretty much just ignore. This results in him giving up on himself, which causes the black fog that torments the characters throughout the story to take him to his death. Characters ignoring important shit is a huge problem in the writing of this game. Miyuki is a girl who barely speaks and is always accompanied by her brother Haru, who's taking care of her. Unlike Takuma and the gang, they've been in the other world for a very long time. In fact, 50 years ago, Miyuki and her brother Haru were sent to the other world where they befriended their partners Renamon and Gabumon. When they were being pursued by a creature that emerged from the black fog, Miyuki let herself to be captured to save Haru, transporting him back to the real world, leaving behind a confused Gabumon who grew to resent Haru for abandoning him. Somehow Miyuki was saved from the clutches of the creature, though a part of her soul was not, causing her to become lethargic and lose her ability to speak properly. This is maybe also the reason why she hasn't grown at all along the years, despite a few hours in the real world being about 10 days in the other one. Her partner Renamon stayed by her side, disguising herself as Miyuki's brother due to that form seemingly calming her. The professor is an elderly man with intimate knowledge of the other world, when he can remember it, that is. He's vaguely depicted of having memory issues, whether due to dementia or the fall he suffers in Chapter 2. But even when he does remember, he refuses to speak up about his hypotheses because it goes against his creed, even when the information he holds could be extremely helpful. Like him being Miyuki's brother Haru, who grew up to be a scientist to specifically learn about the other world and bring his sister back. I left Shuji last cause, hoo boy, this fucking guy. Shuji, or rather his character and the way the writing treats his behavior, is what got me to make this video. Now I'm not saying it's wrong or bad to have a character who's morally reprehensible, but I am saying that if you're gonna have a character like that, then perhaps other characters around them should at the very least react to their words and deeds. Shuji's an abusive piece of shit. Immediately after meeting his partner Lopmon, Shuji's disgusted by him. This quickly turns into verbal abuse and ultimately physical abuse. Again, it's fine to depict such a character, but it's incredibly frustrating when an awful guy is doing awful things in front of other people who are ignoring it. If you can't figure out how to have the other characters act around Shuji's behavior, then have him hide it. It's not that fucking hard. You already made this guy so close to irredeemable in my eyes, and then you won't even bother to have the other characters react appropriately to his actions, making them basically just as shitty. Sometimes someone might say something like, "Hey Shuji, you're being too mean to Lopmon," but they're quickly shot down by him just shouting that it's none of their business. Many times a clear issue is presented, whether it be Shuji's abuse of Lopmon, tension between other characters, or some obvious problem that should be dealt with or at least talked about, and then Takuma will think to himself, "Oh, this is bad," and then the plot just moves on. Just talk is a prevalent issue in a lot of fiction, but it's never frustrated me more than it has with this game. There's this one point early on in Digimon Survive where Cyclonemon is about to kill Saki and starts psychoanalyzing her out of nowhere. And it works! She just completely breaks down and is like, "Oh no, I guess I gotta let this huge murder monster kill me because I have zero mental fortitude, and he just psychoanalyzed me so accurately." It's exactly the kind of writing that infuriates me. Another thing that the writing in this game has going for it that frustrates me to no end is how it spins its wheels and wastes your time. Like when we meet the mysterious lady who totally doesn't look like a bad guy in disguise, and certainly not specifically Arukenimon, who did the same thing in Digimon Adventure 02. It's so obvious even to someone who doesn't know anything about Digimon that yes, Kaito is correct. That's a villain. But the game forces you to go around the cast a couple of times and ask them if they think this lady is sus. I felt similarly again when the gang was led to the sewers and separated because of Arukenimon's trap. After figuring out that he's being attacked by a rude and mean clone of Agumon trying to badmouth him, Takuma, instead of explaining the nature of the trap to his friends, he, I guess, thinks it's better to use this opportunity to have the characters go through meaningless little development moments. We do this 3 times. You could have solved this immediately and spared your friends from being hurt by seeing their partners insult them by just speaking up. The fake Shakomon just blowing their cover was pretty funny though. Now at the end of this sewer section on the first playthrough, Shuji's abusive behavior comes to a climax when he starts kicking Lopmon for not evolving like the rest of the Digimon. The negative energy from this experience makes Lopmon evolve into Wendigomon. If you're a Digimon fan, you knew this was gonna happen, but Shuji getting eaten definitely caught me off guard. I doubt the writer wanted me to feel excited and relieved for not having to perceive this lowlife anymore though. After the sewer incident, because Lopmon ate Shuji, all the kids are now scared and distrustful of their Digimon. They're thinking that the Digimon are either conspiring against them or that they could randomly turn evil, ready to attack them at any moment. This part sucks so bad. It makes sense that the gang would get traumatized after witnessing Lopmon turn into a giant monster and eat Shuji. But again, they're completely ignoring Shuji's actions here. They all saw that it was Shuji kicking Lopmon that triggered the evolution. The only way for this plotline to make sense is for all the characters to conveniently forget the abuse Lopmon experienced. And if that wasn't bad enough, on the second playthrough, this part makes no fucking sense. Because Ryo snapped out of his panic attack by a good hit to the stomach, he survives to stop Shuji from pushing Lopmon over the edge. Of course, he only speaks up at the last moment instead of any time before this, but Ryo's words make Shuji somehow become remorseful of his actions. This gets Lopmon to evolve into Tsuruiemon instead. It's funny how the scene is followed by Agumon getting his ultimate evolution, completely stealing the thunder. So Lopmon not scarfing down Shuji like a midnight snack means the gang doesn't become distrustful of their partners, right? No, they do. It's just that instead of the inciting incident being Shuji getting munched on, it's the fact that there was dark fog around Lopmon for a second. Yeah, this whole thing that makes the kids be completely unreasonably hostile to their partners. The reason that causes a fallout between Falcomon and Minoru is Lopmon having a bit of a dark aura around him. You know, after days of being mistreated by Shuji. You can't tell me this isn't the dumbest shit you've ever seen. Anyway, this gets resolved by the professor's dementia clearing up for a second so he can tell the kids that their emotions affect their partners. After this, the writing becomes more of what I was expecting before playing the game, so kinda dull and predictable. I do enjoy the bit when Takuma, Agumon, and Miyuki go back to the real world. The scene where Takuma's mom calls him is honestly great. This, however, does result in frustration again, because when Takuma gets back to the other world, it's been 10 days. Miyuki is nowhere to be seen, and the rest of the gang, despite knowing, are unwilling to tell him what happened to her. Takuma also finds it unnecessary to mention that Miyuki's been in the other world for 50 years. I guess the writer remembered the show don't tell rule and misunderstood it to mean that characters shouldn't tell each other crucial information. But yeah, the Master, the game's main villain, has possessed Miyuki in order to use her bloodline ability to bridge the worlds to save his world from decaying. The gang then go on a mission to rescue her. I think the endgame works better on the first playthrough of the moral route. It feels tighter paced and wastes less time. The True Route's endgame feels repetitive with the Sovereign Monsters plotline, which I really don't have much to talk about. It's just so generic, it fires zero neurons for me. Literally makes me feel nothing but boredom. The true ending also omits certain things from the first playthrough, I guess to not repeat them. I mean, if we're skipping shit, then might as well skip over everything before the endgame when there's actual new content. And no, fast forwarding doesn't count. The evolution scenes with Gabumon and Renamon are also better handled on the first playthrough. In fact, let's talk about evolution scenes. The first evolution scenes that are integrated to the main plot are mostly handled well, but for all the characters with affinity, their Digimon's ultimate and mega evolution scenes are relegated to these little side quest scenarios that are unlocked when the character's affinity is at a certain amount. Evolution scenes are pretty important in Digimon, I'd say. They're always supposed to be these big pop-off moments. Sometimes they're there to just be exciting, and sometimes they're like shonen power-ups. Evolution as a result of character development. The affinity system having evolutions as the reward doesn't work for me when the evolutions are infinitely more flaccid as unvoiced scenes separate from the plot that all follow the same template. Seriously, every single one of these scenes are pretty much the same scenario. Even the game itself recognizes that these scenes are unimportant by skipping them on subsequent playthroughs. Sure, some of them are still entertaining to an extent, like Shuji's and Ryo's ultimate evolution scenes, but they're still frustrating for not being a part of the main plot, especially when there are several moments where an evolution scene would have fit perfectly. And finally, we get to the ending revelation of Digimon Survive. You see, the Digimon in this game aren't really Digimon. They're Kemonogami, or beast gods. And the world they inhabit, the world that our heroes got transported to, is not the digital world, but rather a spirit world that is affected by the thoughts and beliefs of the people in the real world. To keep this world functioning, the Kemonogami needed not only for humans to pray and worship them, but to make sacrifices. Specifically child sacrifices who were offered to the Kemonogami by the maidens from the Minase family, who have the ability to bridge the worlds through song. Miyuki being the latest maiden, who the master needed to save the other world from being forgotten about. When Takuma and Miyuki got sucked back to the real world along with Piedmon, they were seen by some school kids who filmed the fight between Agumon and Piedmon. The video of the fight was then uploaded to the internet and went viral, which caused people to become aware of the Kemonogami. This, alongside the kids returning to the real world accompanied by their partners in the true ending, informed people even more of the Kemonogami world, specifically through the internet, transforming the Kemonogami world into a digital world and making the Kemonogami digital monsters. This game is essentially an alternate origin story of Digimon. Now, the problem I have with this is that it's used to change the setting and lore from something that I find to be unique and compelling to something that's bland and generic. The digital world is a really cool concept. It's visually interesting, and the whole questionably man-made world inhabited by artificial life concept is fascinating. All that's stripped away for a throwaway reveal at the end. The original ideas put forth by Survive to present something new to the franchise are all tired and stale. You have a franchise that offers a unique, fantastical world, and you throw it away for shit I've seen a million times before. Why? Because you didn't care enough to bother to write something that fit an existing world? As a fan, I feel disrespected. It's not like we have an abundance of Digimon games where we get to properly explore its world. This game is exhaustingly disappointing. That said, despite it getting a lot wrong in my view, there's one thing it got absolutely right. Survive understands the point and appeal of Digimon. The bond between a Digimon and its partner, which is more than I can say about most Digimon games. This made me contemplate if I had it in me to replay the game twice more to see the other routes, but writing this script solidified my feelings of not wanting to engage with this game ever again. And yeah, this video is basically just a man-child complaining about a children's game not being adequate enough for his adult sensibilities, but I just love Digimon a whole bunch, and I'm in desperate need of a game in the franchise that makes me feel the way I do about some of the entries in other mediums. Didn't work out with this one, but hey, maybe next time.